Ericsson has always been a leader in the mobile networking space. 40% of global mobile traffic runs through Ericsson networks. And Ericsson manages networks that serve more than 1 billion subscribers every day. But Ericsson is more than mobile networks. Here with me today is Erik Ekkuden, the SVP, CTO, and Head of Technology Strategy for Ericsson here in the Silicon Valley. Today we'll be talking about Ericsson's initiatives in the cloud and how Ericsson is working with entrepreneurs like you to build an ecosystem to enable Ericsson's vision of the network society. And I think that's a good place for us to start. Perhaps, Erik, you can talk with us a little bit about Ericsson's cloud initiatives and what does Ericsson mean by the network society?
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Absolutely. So the network society, a term that we started to use quite a few years ago now, really is a combination of mobility and applications in the cloud. So it's a long-term view of how networks and clouds converge. It's also the future state where all the industries that are yet to be digitalized, yet to be mobilized, come online. So it's not only the smartphones and the tablets, it's of course all of the sensors, it's all of the industries, starting with the more obvious ones in the media space, but going all the way into public safety, transport, car industry, all the utilities. Basically any industry that would benefit from connectivity would be online. And sometimes we talk about the number of devices that we are seeing in a long-term network society vision as perhaps 50 billion. Of course, some of those numbers were brought out many years ago, and I think that now we see that depending on how we define this, we're going to pass that number. But it's really about not only simple sensors, it's about basically everything being intelligently connected. So the network society is a combination of mobility and the cloud. A long-term vision for that would be 2020 and all these other industries coming online. But that also connects to what you brought up as the Ericsson view on clouds, because as we are moving from connectivity or networks plus cloud, which is where we are today, we are bringing much more of the capabilities out of the network. The mobility piece, obviously, everything that has to do with distribution, so much of the processing would not be done in central clouds, they would actually be distributed all the way out to the edge and the access. And that is perhaps one of the two areas where Ericsson is focusing more when it comes to cloud than some of the things that you've been talking about today when it comes to data centers and what we're doing with virtualization and cloud technologies in data centers. So moving much of the compute and storage out in the wide area network all the way out to the access is a key part of Ericsson's network society vision. The other part, which seemed natural, I think, after the last session that I heard, at least the last part of, is to look at this from a end-to-end orchestration management point of view, because as we combine cloud resources, centrally distributed and wide area network resources, the cross-domain orchestration is a key pillar of that. So those two aspects, the wide area networking together with the cloud as an orchestration part and the distribution of cloud resources as such, those are two, I think, very important areas that we will continue to drive. Now, when it comes to the cloud itself, we are, of course, working a lot when it comes to virtualizing all the network applications. NFV and what's happening in that space is familiar to many of you, I think. But then we're also doing the same journey when it comes to the IT part of the networks and using the same OpenStack technology for offering external enterprise public offering clouds, public clouds for offering through our customers and typically service providers. So that's a little bit of how we see the combination of network society and cloud.
Okay, very good, very good. TiEcon is a conference for entrepreneurs. So how can entrepreneurs work with large companies like Ericsson and kind of beyond funding? How can you build a cross-pollination a communication of innovation between Ericsson engineers and business people and technologists within startups?
Well, you mentioned that it should be beyond the funding. I know that we have a separate session on how we're engaging with the startups via strategic investment, so that's to follow. But when it comes to the other areas, I think there are two main ways to engage with Ericsson. The first one, obviously, directly with Ericsson. We are working very much with university startups, smaller and bigger companies when it comes to components in this vision of a network society. And that could be in any of the areas that I mentioned. And one very important and good way, I think, for many application-centric companies to engage with Ericsson is through our smartphone labs. We are very much engaged with optimization of network performance together with applications. We've done quite a lot when it comes to working with the application ecosystem here in Silicon Valley, also working with some of the bigger ones. We've jointly worked with Facebook on hackathons and all of their ecosystem in terms of basically making applications work well on 3G and 4G and sometimes even 2G networks. So that's the direct part, working directly with Ericsson. The other part is actually to get access through some of our customers, the service providers of the world. And I can just name AT&T as one example. I think when they announced some time back that the initiative Domain 2.0 is something that they are investing significantly in. They also mentioned at the same time that it's a combination of small companies and bigger companies. Ericsson is obviously part of that, and we're driving that together with AT&T, but it's a way where we can also engage with startups, smaller companies, and creating joint solutions for the customers. The first track, I would say, really has the potential to scale to, as you mentioned, the 40% of the world's infrastructure when it comes to mobility. So that means that engaging with Ericsson would allow components and parts of new applications to actually be deployed worldwide and hence get a global scale without having to go for point integration and typical IS/IT system integration on each and every market, each and every customer network. Because of course, from our point of view, that's basically a push of a button to get the software out in all of these networks.
Good. What is Ericsson looking for in terms of outside innovation from Silicon Valley?
Well, I think that we're clearly a networking company. So some of you may remember that we've built phones, devices in the past. That is no longer the case. So we focus on the infrastructure, the mobility, the access part, the transport networks, the IP part and the cloud part, and associated OSS, BSS, and analytics systems. So all of those, obviously in the SDN and virtualization space, especially the high performance part of that. Companies who have great ideas of how we can really bring the best out of these networks. So highest performance and new technologies to foster that in the SDN and cloud area. When it comes to orchestration and analytics, I think that's also an area which would benefit from more outside innovation to drive into networks, again, for performance, but also for creating new services. Much faster, much more rapid innovation, bringing the technology into these networks. Media, another big area for us, and certainly not to forget the mobility and the radio area. Here I see a lot of good initiatives in Silicon Valley coming out of the realization that the mobile part, the wireless part, really needs really advanced technologies because we have a scarcity of spectrum. We have traffic growth that needs to be managed, but also that there is a need to sort of balance between what goes on the device side and the network side to get the highest performance and to get user experience to basically work as all these other industries require. It's not only about best effort smartphones. This is about critical infrastructure. This is about critical industries who have much more stringent requirements on the networks to be able to deliver. I mean, we're talking about self-driving cars in a few years. We're talking about remote surgery and other things. Of course, they require really high-performance radio networks.
Great. So a lot of opportunities for all of you out there. Right. Let me see. So Ericsson has had a very strong presence in many of the open source summits here in the Valley and other places. Why is Ericsson so interested in open source organizations?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Partly this is a very natural step for the whole industry as we are moving to common virtualization layers, basically getting classical IT cloud technologies to fuse with the networks. I think OpenStack obviously is a good example, Open Daylight when it comes to SDN controllers. One of the more recent announcement was Ericsson's role in the PaaS layer when it comes to the Cloud Foundry Foundation. So there are a number of examples here. Now, of course, to some extent, this is just a natural evolution. But I think from an industry point of view, this is a big shift because those for us, whether classical open source or things that have happened in data centers, they need additional, we need to put additional requirements on those. It's not good enough just to take what's there in a standalone central data center and sort of deploy it widely in networks and hope for the best and the performance would come. We actually have to redo part of that. And so Ericsson's role in these open source for us is maybe more that of sort of a strong backer, a contributor that firmly believes that open source technologies and components from these open source for us should be deployed rapidly into the networks. And that's contributions, that's requirements, but it's also very much to finally make it work in distributed environments. It's a very important task, basically, to get these frameworks, as they are in many cases, to work well in real deployments.
Great. Well, you talked a little bit earlier about the Network Society and where we all hope to be in 2020. And a big component of that is 5G. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? What does 5G offer other than greater speed?
So 5G. Are we ready for 5G? Well, I can see that some are. I think there are some good things to remember here, and one is that if it was only about speed, then much of the development that we already see today, when it comes to LTE's evolution, when it comes to what's happening on the Wi-Fi side, is taking care of that to some extent. But if we stretch our thinking a little bit out and we say that by 2020, what do we want these systems to do for us? And then I'm talking about things beyond smartphones and tablets. I'm talking about the connected cars. I'm talking about the utility industries. I'm talking about health, public safety. I'm talking about more advanced media industries. And certainly a lot of the sensor and Internet of Things, IoT, use cases which are driving much more uplink traffic than today's more downlink heavy use cases, then I have to honestly say that today's systems wouldn't cut it. We have to really make major advances when it comes to highest performance, reliability, resilience, of course, but also, as you mentioned, speed, 10 times the speeds of what we have today, gigabit per second speeds, sub-millisecond latencies. We're talking about an architecture that allows applications to be distributed all the way out to the edge, as I said. So the cloud piece and the access piece need to work much better together. So it's much more than just a new radio access. It's a system, as we see it. It's a 5G system, very much taking care of these new requirements. And as we speak, this is research in many universities here in US, not the least, but around the world. So our thinking here is really that by having many good eyes on these problem areas as such, and it could be more narrow in terms of advanced MIMO technologies, it could be more narrow in terms of silicon for advanced antenna systems and PA systems, it could be in the distributed cloud area, it could be in basically any of these areas that meet those use cases. If by starting that now and talking about it now, we get more eyes on the problem, and then as the years progress here and we will make evolutions to the existing systems, we will find that roughly around 2020, we will have created enough industry momentum to actually roll out commercially the next generation system, and that would be both access, as I said, and the cloud.
Great, and we had talked a little bit beforehand about security and the enablement of security, which of course is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Absolutely. So maybe you can speak for a moment on that.
Absolutely, and it's something that we should absolutely talk much more about. And I think that security in networks and clouds today, you could say that it's high attention and we are finding good solutions for it. But if I look out another 5, 6, 7 years, I see that we can't afford to have duplication of infrastructure. We need to get all these industries, all these use cases to basically ride on one and the same mass market infrastructure. That's the way to get the cost down at the same time as we get performance up. So 10 times bandwidth and much more capacity and lower latency doesn't come for free. But the way to basically make it happen is to make sure that we can cover enough of the use cases with mass market technology, and then these type of tenant separation solutions, security from software all the way down to silicon, and being able to run on one and the same infrastructure is very important. So of course, security becomes very intrinsically linked to the network evolution, and not to sort of forget, of course, about all the application security questions. Yeah, absolutely.
Through all the layers.
Yep.
Well, great. Well, thank you very much. Please join me in thanking Erik Ekkuden.